Hello, everyone. This is Daniel, and I'm going to be talking to you about what America did very wrong, starting from gun rights. So, let's talk about gun rights, and let's see if this works. Yeah, let's talk about gun rights and what this all means for America. So, this is a sort of a rebelling point. Basically, it's started in the Revolutionary War and all that, and it basically was the beginning of all American rights that people will have guns. I'm pretty sure not everyone could own a gun except for the farmers and the workers that were and people that were revolutionaries and all that. But then the right came that everyone could own right to guns. First it was freedom of speech, and then it was the right to own guns, which is the Second Amendment. Now I'm not saying that the Second Amendment was horrible, but it was the first of rebellion that was the first indicator of a rebellion in America. I mean, we rebelled against the church back in, let's say, England. We went away from the Pope. And that's another indication that we were way off. So let's first go to the gun rights. As you can see, almost everyone these days, and back in the 1800s, everyone could own a gun, and even today, almost everyone can own a gun. And everyone in America seems to own a gun, and there seems to be a lot of gun deaths, and especially deaths from weapons. That is much higher than every other country that we know of so far. Almost every other country that we know of have restricted weapons and guns. Australia is like you can't be restricted on weapons in Australia or in Africa, let's say, because you have to use these things to let's say protect you and help you with the wood and all that. Let's say in Europe, a saw cannot be a chainsaw unless you're a hard worker. You have to, even in some European countries, you have to have a right to have a chainsaw just by signing up for a chainsaw or a buzzsaw, wherever you have it. Just you have to sign up to even have one and have a license for it. And that sounds bizarre for Americans, but you have to have a license for a buzzsaw. You have to go through criminal records in some European countries, even in some parts of Israel and other places like that. You have to have a very strong license for even, let's say, a sword, or even, let's say, a very sharp knife, because you have to. At least you have to remember that you have to, even in Japan, you have to have a very serious license to have a sharp blade in Japan. You have to be licensed, and like a very sharp knife. You can have a regular sharp knife in Japan, and you usually have, let's say, chopsticks. Those are the regular things you can have. And to cut meat, you'd have to have a regular, not serrated, but a regular, let's say, butter knife or not butter knife. If it has to be a steak knife, then it can be a steak knife. There are only two classes of knives, like butter knife and meat knife. In Japan, there's chef's knives also, but those are the licensed chef knives. In some European countries, you have to be licensed to own things like chainsaws or buzzsaws, and especially you cannot even have a gun in certain European countries. You just cannot have a weapon in certain European countries that is a gun. You just cannot have a gun in some European countries, except if you're, let's say, in the military, and you have to go through serious preparations for that. You cannot have any single criminal record or anything like that, because if you have a little bit of criminal record in you, if you assaulted someone, you're not going to have it. In America, if you've been in jail, all you have to do is sign up for a gun and you have it. And that sounds weird for you guys, but it does happen in America like that. Some people even create guns in America. So that is an indicator that we've really messed up. In Africa, some people have guns, but that's only to the guards, not to the regular person that can have one. If a regular person has a gun, they're in trouble, or they just have hunter. They can hunt species, but not endangered species. That's only people who are farmers or hunters. Only they can have guns. Everyone else do not have guns. And then there are thugs that have guns that have it illegally in Africa. Same with other poor countries, except Haiti, as you know, no one should have a gun. And even licensing yourself up for a gun, that's really vigorous, because it's not vigorous in a way that it's illegal. It's just you have to pay for it, and that's really hard in Haiti. And it sounds bizarre, but it's just certain things that we have in America that every other country just does not seem to have. And that leads to guns, violence, and all that. We just have like loose ends when it comes to laws against violence. And there are a lot of people in prison because we just don't care about the criminal. We just let them do the crime and don't prevent it. Almost every other country just tries to prevent every crime possible, just by feature indication and law of psychology. You hear of a lot of psychiatrics and psychology people. Like if you have anything to do with insanity in England, let's say, you would be on the list for probable reason to go to jail. And you would need a lot of psychologists and a lot of mental institutions to go in your life because you're mental. In America, that's another problem we have. So let's just go from that list. We started from gun violence. Sorry that was long, but now we're going to Founding Fathers' era in, let's say, 1810. That was from a Jewish point of view, and I believe the Founding Fathers found out that, from a Jewish point of view, when they let freedom of religion, some Jewish guy came up and said, well, I'm very rich. Rothschild came back in the old days, and then it came to a law set up that we can do whatever we want with the Jewish laws, and then it fell apart from there. And I don't know a lot about it, but I hear that from the Freemasonry, and all the other laws that came from Jewish law, from all the other Jewish religions that came from the Jewish religion itself, mainly to do with Solomon, sorry to say, but Solomon was a very wise leader, but had a very weak heart, very weak faith. He could not handle himself very easily. And that partly came from Bathsheba and David, the way he was dealing with our very messed up children. I would say all of David's children were messed up after that incident, and that included Solomon. Even though he was very wise, but with wisdom you must have faith, very high faith when it comes to wisdom. Or you basically having, or you basically if you have very high faith, no, if you have very high wisdom and you don't have faith, you're basically nothing. So let's go to the fact that Solomon was practically the leader of all cults that are likely Satanists or all that. And that started in the 1810 time, and it really rose up from there in a really horrible, ugly way. That's all I have for that one. Let's see. Church era. And basically from the beginning, which was 1620, we decided to go away from the Pope in a holy and an unholy way. You see, we did not want anything to do with the Pope in America in 1620 because we wanted freedom from that. And basically, the Pope, well, they were not as holy either. They were messed up. So basically, the church was messed up since not the beginning of Christianity, but basically since Gnosticism came in. Then it came to not just Gnosticism, but also Catholicism. Catholicism, can't say it. Catholicism, I can't, yeah. Since the Catholics came, we had problems. And then, of course, America wanted to be without Catholicism. But then we came to it later on. And then in 1835, and the other one was 1810, and the other one was 1790. In 1735, there was a group that was rising up from a little bit that they had, and they were teaching things like be positive, be a guru, and all that. And wasn't part of the church plan, but they said God is positive, He is love, and that was a good thing. He was love, but then they meant to do it. Someone that said that God is love turned into being a guru sort of way. That they decided to be like a guru in that God is love, and it became a new age cult. It's not just evangelical; it's also other religions that were part of the evangelical religion. It wasn't the leader's fault; it was the people's fault that went beyond him, that did horrible things. And that's what I would like to call the fall of the church. Is because when America decided to go without Catholicism, then they decided to bring Catholic churches in America a little later on in the early 1700s. And then we have a huge problem with America, with the church, because that's when people decided, this is, we started having doubts about churches, and then that stuff happened because of that. In the 1960s, let's say, we had new type of churches because it was leading up to that, and then we had a new way of teaching. That's not biblical. That is not what Christ does. That's not what Christ told us to do. Christ told us to teach in a way that is original, but not original to the BC texts, but original to Christ's teaching. The original, which is God, the foundation of Christianity, and God, the foundation of right teaching, and the right teaching is the Bible. And not just going for the Old Testament, but also especially going to the New Testament where Jesus died on the cross, and that we should base ourselves off of that. And other people saying we have to bow down to Saint Mary, Saint George, and all these other saints. When we do that, and then other churches say, "Oh, we must love like Jesus," and they've missed the point that Jesus died on the cross and is a judge, and he's a judge, and he's a just judge. He'll judge all nations, but he also loves. He's everything holy. Remember that. That's where we miss the point, because when we're missing the point, we have all these different ways of believing, but we do not have the right way of believing. When we were in America, we should have said, why don't we do the right way of teaching things? But they did not. So that was a sad point of a problem in America, was when people were teaching America to do the wrong things. Not purposely, but, to go away from the Pope and to have a freedom of what we want to believe in. That was America's biggest flaw right there. That was America's hugest flaw. And that was what's not mainly what led to rebellion, but that's practically what kind of led to rebellion. So let's go to something else. Then we got to these 1870s, factory overflow. I can talk to you about the whole thing about factory overflow from 1870s to today. But what started in the 1870s was that we started mass producing everything. And then from the 1870s to the 1910s, when World War I came, we started getting electronics, like electricity through everything. We started getting electricity. Yeah. Hold on. Thank you. Okay, locked. Good. Sorry, I had to do something about that. Wait, where was he? I was blocking him anyway. Good, thank you. Where were we? Oh, factory. So basically, in the 1910s, electricity started going to everyone's homes. For first thing that started going to the homes was light bulbs and electronic stuff. And then 1920s and 30s, we had everything else, and then mass production started going to cars and all that. And then World War II started happening, which we'll go a little further in detail. And then computers started coming up, and then now we have like a huge flaw with what do we call it? Artificial stuff. Like we all have artificial stuff, and that mass production of factories started mass producing meat as well, which we now have everything that we now have everything artificially made just because of the factories. So the factories made everything artificial in America, which led to rebellion in a much greater way because people are doing, let's say, people are saying that not even I'm trying to say evenly, but what we're doing is because of the factory, people are going crazy because of the fact that people are going against chemicals. And there's people that are spreading propaganda about just about everything. And even worse is that the propaganda is going everywhere about technology and how bad it is and how bad all this, let's say, there's a lot of propaganda, but there's also the propaganda with jet streams and all that. It's just a silly talk because, what's really going on is that technology is driving us crazy because it's because some people that have started these series were actually on drugs, and drugs are starting to become mass produced. It's just a problem that started not just only in America, but also in England, where America came from. So you got to remember that, okay? All right. So I could go on for a long time for all these things, but I'm not going to go too technical into all this. So let's see, next stuff. Women's rights. Oh, this is fun. If you ever wonder about women's rights, let me tell you something very personal that I don't think a lot of women will like to hear. What is a woman? A woman is the head of a child. Okay, so what is a child? Basically, a child is just the beginning. Even animals are guarding the children. Children are like the animals, unfortunately. But animals also guard children because they know what's going on with the children. If that's in some cases. If that's what happens in some cases. So basically, a man is the head of a woman, and God is the head of a man. A woman is just a weak body that can only do like nurse work and cleaning work and teacher work. That's all they should do. But then, of course, America decided that women are to be even more limited than they really should be. Because women do have a say about their children. And that's what voting is. That's what voting's all about. To have a say what they should have for their children. I mean, that should be different, but it's what we have nowadays. Women's rights. But back in 1915, I slipped my foot. Not that bad. It's not that bad. But back in 1915, or a little later, women started to go. What is this? Women started to go beyond just righteous. They started going in corrupt ways and evil ways. The way they were talking to the governors all about. They were harassing government. It was women. Women can get really dirty when they want to speak up about certain things. They can get really dirty, and they were doing horrible things back in 1915 to 1920 maybe, and they were speaking so ugly and so in such a horrible way about men that they're better than men, and that other people that are gurus and that are atheists and monotheists started thinking that women should also have rights. No, a man is the head of a woman. And what women did in the 1920s, they also said, "Oh, we should get rid of alcohol because of what the men did." And they were ugly women, of course, but these ugly women said, "We will not kiss a man that has been drunken." And that got everyone thinking, these ugly women will not kiss a man, even if they're drunken. And back then, that was a horrible thing to be considering. But that was considered horrifying news to a man, because if an ugly woman would never even dare kiss a man that was even more ugly than them. And then what led to that was the women decided to go against even alcohol, which then led to men basically hiding alcohol, which was a crime because of an amendment. They led it that far, as you know. And these women decided to, basically, they decided that decided that they'll make the men suffer because of what they drunk. And then the men decided to become gangs and criminals and mafia, and the men decided to go to go to Italian mafia gangs and all the cartel and just start drinking. That's all they wanted to do. And if anyone decided to go against the mafia and all the cartel, they'll kill you. And that's what caused a lot of problems. Is these women that protested against alcohol and women's rights, they murdered a lot of men and a lot of women that decided to drink and all that. It's really a hypocritical thing that they did. What's worse? Men basically drinking and causing problems? Or basically these men drinking and causing all these problems to children? What's worse? A man just drinking and causing problems to children? Or a man causing problems to the police, which are causing problems to children? So it's even more of a problem when they put in an amendment because of these women protesting. These women don't think. They're horrible people. And people are horrible because they're like Hitler when they sin. Look at my other videos for this proof, okay? All right. So there's other practical problems when women decide to talk. Everything gets worse. That's what happens. America starts to get more unholy because of women. A woman seduces America, and it gets worse. And then there's also the Statue of Liberty that started the Freedom Reign, which I think the Statue of Liberty, I would also talk about that, is that it also caused all these people from foreign countries to come into this land. No, we are supposed to not let foreign people come to this land that is based on holy thoughts, but based on holy ideas. But instead, base this country on holy ideas with many walls. We're supposed to be walled, but instead we're not. So when we don't have walls and border lines, we just become more problematic. So it's just a border problem as well. And just because we don't have borders and that we let all the people in, that's also an indicator that we're getting worse off than before. And part of the problem is, the Mexican people are using that advantage of weak walls to make sure that we, make America worse, not on purpose, but to get help from America, and they get to spread their ideas to us. I mean, the most recent example that I can say is that the statues and even Coco the movie, the child's movie, where people are letting people into this gates of death, where they're even letting, basically this child goes into the gates of death, and all these people are basically dressed up like skeletons, and they all have skeleton designs and all that. That's part of Satan. And now we're getting designs from Satan from Mexico to America. It's spreading everywhere, guys. And then we also have Halloween, which is based off of Catholicism and pagan ideas from all that, and it's all adding up. And the reason why that's become a problem is because Catholicism spread that idea about paganism. Some of it on purpose, but some of it is on purpose. And let me tell you something. We're falling apart because we do not justify the Pope clearly, and we do not justify the laws clearly. And now America's falling apart because of this. And I can say more, but it will be a little bit crazy for you. Okay. Then hypocrisy. I kind of went to hypocrisy because we're supposed to be a Christian nation, but we decided to exactly let everyone believe in what they want to believe. I have problems with that too. I kind of want people to believe in what they want to believe. We should do that, but again, we should be a Christian nation. The Bible doesn't say exactly if anyone is to be an unbeliever in the whole area, just let them be in the whole destruction. Let them be destroyed, and because their destruction is coming. I mean, for one thing, we should be telling the people about God in a way that will help them, but not what will destroy them. And hypocrisy about America is all these people, even 60-90 today, what they're doing is they're literally, let's turn on the cord. Well, they're literally saying we can do whatever we want and still be Christian. We're so lukewarm, guys. We really are so lukewarm. And the fact that we're so lukewarm, we're causing people to fall apart just because we're so lukewarm. And all the other countries hate us because we're so lukewarm. All the other countries hate us because we're so lazy and prideful and all that. We are basically not just Gentiles, but God's enemy. This country is God's enemy, what I'm living in right now. We're God's enemy, like I said. All right, so now the broken 40s. Let's talk about the broken 40s because it was not exactly our fault, but it wasn't easy for what we should have done. I mean, there was Adolf Hitler, a leader of Germany, and he led people to do horrible things. And the reason we should be careful that the reason why we should be careful about who we let be Christian, Adolf Hitler used to be a Catholic. He used to think of people as being Catholic, but he decided to say that everyone. He decided to say that everyone's lesser than he is, except for people that have blonde hair and are just the same as everyone else. He wants everyone to be, in his idea, just like him. He wants everyone to be like him, but in his way to be his people. He wanted everyone to be in a factory design. Everyone that was Nazi was his factory design, in a way. So basically, everyone. Basically, he was a narcissist. He was evil. He was the worst person in the world compared to all of our beliefs. But let me tell you something. Anyone who is not innocent is equally as bad as Hitler, including those who are Christians. That those people are antichrists that do not accept Jesus into their hearts, that did not repent, that did not, you know, those people that did not know that Jesus died on the cross for our sins and that we should repent and that we should also do the things according to God and also basically get baptized in Jesus' name and do God's will. You guys are just as bad as Hitler just because you do not know God. So that's the reason why people are horrible. And that's the reason why people can be as godly as God. That's why the term godly came, that's where the term godly came from. That's basically, basically, we're just going to be like God. Not like Hitler, not like Satan. But let me get to the broken 40s. People fled to from other countries to America, and these people were Jews. All these Jews came to America because of the persecution that they went through. And many of the Jews went to regions of America, and the deal was broken, and technology was spread, and all that. We just had a whole mess of problems, like technology being much greater, Jews going to America, that spread good things and the satanic things. We even had a Jew in the 50s, and other Jews from the 1910s and 1940s, I think. I don't know where it came from, but Anthony, what was Anthony's name? But the guy named Anthony, a famous Satanist, who I think maybe it used to be a Jewish Christian or something like that. He spread his Satanism, I think, back in the 40s. And then the great example of that is, his Satanism spread until the 60s. And then these guys decided to mess the little children's lives up back in the 50s. And the children were bored because it's not only just because of television, the way they controlled the television, the way they controlled the modern movement and all that back in the late 30s and 40s. And basically, all these modern movements in these old-fashioned homes, they wanted modern and stylish because of these Satanists back in the 40s. And then the hippie movement and all that began, and the Great Rebellion happened. Let's just go to the Great Rebellion. We don't have that. But this is what led to the Great Rebellion in the 60s. Then people started going out of control, and then all these movements came to go against all these sins and people decided to say, oh, we shall be sinful forever and go against the church. I mean, back in the 30s, there was a whole lot of people in churches. Like, I would like to say 30%. There was 18% in the 60s, and I would say 10% today. Maybe even 8% today in churches. They're regular churchgoers. So, this is getting interesting, but this is getting ugly. Then, the ugly part of it is that crime rose, it skyrocketed back in 1972, where they let all these people out into the streets who were crazy and criminal and all that. These were people from mental institutions that were considered autistic, Down syndrome, and then all the other people who were schizophrenics, and all these mental people who are literally killing people and causing problems in the courthouses. Movies like Exorcism, like movies like The Exorcist, basically those movies would possess people, and there would be satanic freakouts and problems in the 70s. And just because of the problems back then, then there was the 80s idea that we shall be like artificial robots. They decided to bring robots since 1977 with Star Wars. It started in 1975, but then with people becoming cybots back in the 70s, and they started to do that. They started to get idea that people would become cybots, and unfortunately, cyborgs or cybots, they were the worst. They were the worst ideas. And now let's talk about 1996, which is probably one of the most hidden icons of today. It's probably gonna it's probably gonna be let loose like a whole pack of wild dogs trying to eat you. It'll be let loose like demons, killing everyone in the horde, except God would prevent them from doing that. It will be let loose like hundreds of millions of demons, like even billions of demons. Basically, making people become miserable because of what they're doing. Let's talk about 1996. All right. So back in the early 90s, I believe this happened. There's an experiment called, I don't know what the name is, but basically there was an experiment to have officials go into the satanic realm. And this was based on an experiment back in the 80s that, letting the whole coil of the world going speeding all at once and, causing a particle coil. The particle coil and having these particles going beyond light speed. Or something like that. So you thought, this would lead. And these people thought, this would lead into the realm of demons, okay? But then something happened in 1986. With one experiment on the other end of the wiretapping, a girl has gone missing, and basically someone was looking for her, but they couldn't find her. She was in a elect city of demons. And then on the other side, they didn't know what happened, so they wanted to do the same thing, but have someone go on the other side, be part of that experiment, see where she has gone. Well, she had just she probably just vaporized, or they thought she vaporized, but the demon inside her was let out. And then these people were going on and experimenting. But what they really found out is that they could actually go on the other hand of America and just find the demons themselves in America. And that's not going to make sense to you now, but it's going to make sense to you later, that these people had intentions just to go into the spirit world. What they found out is that some of their people, the high officials, in somewhere in the desert of California. They just found out that they've just let loose a whole pack of demons, and it first started with the gay movement and all the other movements that was indicated by these people. Then it became obvious back in 2000 where people started going into propaganda about oh, let's just be hippies and all that. And then what happened is that they let these demons. They basically talk to demons what life is all about, because demons, they hate humans. Demons hate humans, and these humans became their spirits of their own. And they talk to these demons, and these were high-ranking government officials. But it wasn't just that. Back in the 1940s, people did that, but then high-ranking officials did that when they all knew about humans, when all of them had, or at least almost all of them had, knowledge of human psychology. And the demons indeed heard about this from the high-ranking officials, that this is what human psychology can do, but the officials knew how to break human psychology. And this is why we have a fall of human psychology. It's because of what happened in 1996. So unfortunately, now we have a secret basement where these free agents are basically becoming demons and telling them what to do. While one of them failed, all the rest of them knew what they're doing and succeeded. So, why one of them failed? Well, she was the only good person. She was God's child, because she did not believe in doing all the wrong things. She only wanted to go in that job just because the whole family wanted her to be the one that gave her the money, because the rest of her family were criminals and they did not believe in God. And she thought by believing in God and by supporting the family and telling them about God, that she would be the one that would help the family. She did not end up doing that, but the family realized that when she was Christian, that she was being persecuted, and the whole Bible was right, even though they realized that they were not right. So just by one person they believed, but just by one person, these people were more extra cautious about who would enter. And now we have people who are Jewish. None of them are Christian. If anyone says Christian on their list, they would ban them from their group. And now we have a lot of these places, mostly from California and Oregon, Nevada, Utah, Louisiana, DC, New York, and one in Australia, a couple in UK, and a couple in Canada, and a couple in Iceland. But we have a lot in America. We have a main problem with people becoming crazy because the occult knows what they're doing. They even have a line going to Russia, where they just appear in Russia and they tell people what to do to make people go crazy. They didn't realize it would lead to people voting for Trump and destroy this country, but they do their best to make the people go crazy, just so we could actually not get the money from them. It's just because they just realized that this nation was not based off of God, but off of this was based off of going against the Pope alone. going against Christianity. That's what they believe this was based off of. And so it's the reason they just want this whole nation to become against Christianity. And also the fact is, there's this evil lady that decided to go against. I know this is off topic. Basically, an example is this lady decided to go against church and state, but these people go further, and that state shall be Satanism, and this church thing shall be part of the state, and that we shall this church thing shall be like people. The whole church thing shall be people believing in the gods, and state shall be Satanism. And that's the reason why this America is falling apart. It's causing people to go crazy. It's causing a lot of people to go in panic mode. And now that we have the internet, which was thankfully and not thankfully on their part, is the reason why. Back in 1996, we just started getting the internet in 1997. They decided to invent something called the internet, and decided they could since Windows 95 was a good opening tool for the internet. Well, Windows 95 was a gateway to them leading into other people talking on the internet called the web. And then net. It was not just a net. It was a net for children, not just a net for children. They would have it worldwide spread. And this was heavily influenced by demons. This was not people, guys. The demon said that anyone that goes to America from Israel, or anyone that goes to, let's say, Turkey from Israel, they say, okay, that's part of Babylon now. That's great. Because anyone who is Jewish, there's one good thing. That the Jewish are the first to go to heaven. It's exactly a good thing. And they'll be the first to be raptured, unfortunately. But then the Jewish that believe in God are the faithful ones. But then there are the evil Jewish people that believe in money. And they will believe in corruption, bribery, and Satanism because of Solomon. These people would go against everyone who believes in God. These Jewish people that move from Israel to other countries, that's Babylon, unfortunately. And as you can tell, if you're not speaking in other languages and not speaking God's heavenly tongue, you're babbling. You're causing witchcraft. And unfortunately, America is based off of witchcraft nowadays, which this country is now called Babylon because of witchcraft. Australia is Babylon. The United Kingdom is Babylon. Canada is Babylon. And I believe Iceland is Babylon. All these countries that are practically Babylon are based off of witchcraft. So these people who are witches are killing prophets. They're killing all the people that believe in God, who are Jewish. And whore that is killing people. The one that is liberty shall be killed at the end. And we're going to be utterly judged as American nation. We're going to be so judged. We're going to be completely judged by God. It's going to be judgment that will not just wipe us out, but make a new covenant, which is Jerusalem, the Most High. Since the Jews will go first, they will be the first to be judged as well. The Gentiles will be the last to be judged, and they'll be the last to be going to heaven. And that's so true. Because either you're Jewish and you're completely holy, or you're Jewish and you're so evil and corrupt that you don't know that you're that the thing on your mind is, I want to destroy people like demons do. And a Gentile just, you're either righteous or wicked. And that's all I have to say. That really is. All right, I'll be done now, okay? Bye. Oh, it's over now.